In today's show, previewing the season opener with Darian Vaziri of Locked On Clips. The season's here. Let's get rolling. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard, host of Locked On Blazers. You're listening to Locked On Blazers, Locked On Clippers, special crossover edition here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making both of these shows your first to listen. I'm joined by host of Locked On Clippers. You've seen him at Dime Dropper Pod on Twitter and also the Dime Dropper Pod channel on YouTube. Darian Vaziri. Darian, how you doing?
Very excited to be here. First time collabing with you, so it's always nice to add Locked On hosts to the collaboration resume.
Yeah, and the season is here, dude. We're going to play real basketball games that count. I don't know about you, but I've been itching for meaningful basketball games for closing in on 2 years, so I might not get that anytime soon, but at least these count in the standings.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. Opening night, I'm going to be there, by the way. So nice. I'm very excited to see the new look Blazers.
Yeah, and the sort of similar look Clippers, right? Like, what is going to be other? Okay, here's what I know from some sort of the outside. Here's what's going to be different about the Clippers. They're going to play Marcus Morris less, and they're going to pretend that they care. They're going to care for the first 80 games. What else do I need to know?
Russell Westbrook for a full training camp.
Right.
Russ is definitely a big culture guy, vibes guy. It seems like he's really uplifted the spirit of everybody in the locker room. Like every media member or player that speaks about him has glowing reviews of who he is as a person and what kind of teammate he's been and fulfilled a void that we really kind of needed because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they're kind of lead by example leaders. They're not necessarily vocal leaders. And I feel like when you look at championship teams across history, you always have at least one guy that's very vocal. And Russ, he is a galvanizer. He is a guy that, uplifts other guys' confidence. So having him for a full training camp and then having a backup center, former Portland Trailblazer Mason Plumlee, for the duration of the season. Last season, we actually had either no backup center to start the season or Moses Brown, who I know you're starting to become
Blazer legend.
With. Yeah. So we didn't really have options there. Mason Plumlee now gives us that backup option. And then having Bones Highland from the start of the season as well gives us an element of pace and youth. Terrence Mann starting has made every Clipper fan ecstatic because he's just a great guy to fit in with other star players. And then having KJ Martin added to the team, a little explosion of vertical spacing and bounce and athleticism that we didn't have. So by all accounts, the Clippers are going to try to want to play faster this season because we've been a very slow team in this Kawhi, Paul George era. But I know that sounds like a lot. I'm probably making it sound like more changes than it really is. Nothing compared to your Blazers.
Well, I do think if the Clippers last year, the Clippers pretended like they were a 7-time champion and they could and they just had to get themselves to the playoffs. Maybe they just had to get themselves to the playoffs because they were so darn good, right? I don't think they could do that this year. So in some ways, I think there's some benefits to last year because it's like, the first 70 of these things definitely matter. Like they at least got to get to the last 2 weeks of the season. The West is too good to coast. So I think there's some value there. I was smiling when you said that they're going to play fast. Every team wants to play fast, baby. Every team in the summertime wants to play fast or the fall wants to play fast. I'll believe a Kawhi Leonard team runs when I see it. But I wonder, and we can talk about the Blazers after this. It seems like the Clippers had too many players last year. Like they had sort of the curse of depth. Do you think they've sorted that out a little bit?
A little bit. There are still 11 players that have a good case to play, but I'm thinking that 11th guy, and granted, there will be injuries. There will be Paul George and Kawhi missing games here and there. So those 11 guys, I think they'll all still get to play here and there. And who I think the 11th guy is, a great Portland Trailblazer, Nicholas Batum. Nico has kind of expressed the desire to play less minutes, be more of a reserve. So I think if there's any player that'd be willing to be that 11th guy, you play anytime someone's out or we really need you and accept that role, Nicholas Batum would be that guy because he's already hinted at this potentially being his final season. He does the Olympics at home in Paris, and then he's out with his professional career. And that would be a pretty fitting ending for him. So I think we really have sorted it much more than last season. We had a guy like John Wall last year who was really trying to prove that he was still John Wall.
Right.
Russell Westbrook, he just wants to prove that he can contribute to a winning organization. And now we've given him the power to be knowing he's the starting point guard. You are the guy that's going to have the ball in his hands, and finding Kawhi and Paul George, who wanted less on-ball responsibility. So that's great. That's why I'm also not pro James Harden, is because
I was going to ask what happens if they shake this whole thing up.
I don't know where Russ fits into the equation there. People that want James Harden have said go to the bench. From everything I've heard, and even the beat writers are saying it, that is not an option. He's not going to go back to the bench when we basically pulled him out of the lowest point of his NBA career and put him back in the starting lineup. So I do think, to answer your question, we have sorted out the depth thing better than last season for sure. And I think it's going to be fun to see these guys play, and it's cohesive now. We know the roles more defined at the start of the season.
Yeah, I worry that they're going to figure it out, and then like Thanksgiving, they're going to trade for James Harden, and it's going to be like, this is a bad idea, and they're still going to just push forward. The problem, it's like one of the challenges of the modern NBA is that, like, if PG and Kawhi want this to happen, all it needs is a little bit of momentum downhill, and it's going to happen, even if it's like so obviously a bad idea. James Harden is really good, though. It just, I can't figure out why he would be helpful to the Clippers. I didn't ever watch them last year and was like, boy, if they only just had another dude who would dribble and not play defense.
Another dude that, it's not like we struggle to create good shots.
No, it's like the thing that James Harden doesn't maybe do is like set that sort of intense tone. And that's what the Clippers need. They need someone to set like an intensity tone so they play really hard, because they're extremely talented. But you know, whatever, they're going to trade for James Harden. It'll be fun. At least you have something to talk about on this show. Let's talk Trailblazers. You mentioned about some questions about their whole new look. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. Listen, it's not only the easiest, but one of the most exciting ways to play daily fantasy sports, because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks who are all hustling every other DFS platform they can, at Prize Picks, you just pick more or less than the statistical lines set by Prize Picks. You pick a ballot between 2 and 6 players. They set the lines. You pick more than that number. You pick less than that number, and you win your money. So if you're playing the NBA this season, it's things like points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Prize Picks sets the line, and you make the predictions. And when you win, you get your money quickly. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, and the promo code is LockedOnNBA. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, you're still listening to a crossover edition of Locked On Blazers and Locked On Clippers. I'm Mike Richmond, here with Darian Vaziri of Locked On Clippers. Whatever show you're listening to, make it your first listen every single day. This is a special cross-on episode in both feeds. A whole bunch of fun. Darian, I'm sure you're curious about the baby Blazers. What do you got for me?
Well, I think on paper, your starting lineup is pretty exciting, pretty interesting. Good player at every position. Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shadon Sharp, Jeremy Grant, and Ayton. Obviously, this seems like a rebuilding process for the Blazers. They have clearly, they've traded Damian Lillard. They finally have done it. And now it's going to take some time to get back to a level where you're really contending for things. But what makes the Blazers interesting to me is, one, Scoot Henderson, who, everybody for months thought he was going to be the second overall pick, slips to 3. And then you have DeAndre Ayton, who, in a similar way of Westbrook, how he goes to a new organization and seems like his vibe has totally changed. I saw the videos that the Blazers social media team were posting, and this guy looked like he had just been drafted. So it was very clear when you read someone's body language that Ayton felt like he didn't want to be this fourth option kind of thing anymore. He wanted to be a guy who got the ball, who was looked to as a go-to guy. So I'm really excited to see how he takes that challenge, because now he really has nowhere to hide. The team might not be very good, but I would like to see DeAndre Ayton have the best season of his career statistically and just performance wise. But yeah, it's a fun team. I mean, I'm willing to, or should I say curious to ask what you think the team's going to be as somebody who knows them much better than I could.
I mean, I think they're probably going to be, if not the worst team in the West, right there at the bottom. Like, I mean, there's a lot of things working against them. One, it's a talent league. That's just kind of the nature of it. It's sort of always been that way. I think we're maybe more attuned to it now, but it's a talent league. And the Blazers do not have really high level top end talent. Anthony Simon is really good. Jeremy Grant is a solid third-ish option, third-ish option.
Is he even going to be on the team in January? Like, are they going to go a different direction? Because Clipper fans really want Jeremy Grant, like more than Harden in terms of fit. We'd really
he'd be a great fit. Yeah. Also like former Blazer wings. It's a great place for them to end up, right? It's where they all end up with Norm and Rocco and Nico. I did a bold prediction show for yesterday's show, and I did predict that Jeremy Grant won't be traded. That was one of my bold predictions, but that's just a guess. I think he'll certainly have some interest. If the Clippers had real draft picks, I'd be excited to talk about a show with you, but they're certainly not going to trade Terrence Mann, and KJ Martin and a 2030 draft pick ain't exactly my cup of tea, but I do like KJ Martin. I just think they're the lack of top end talent and the depth. Like the depth is a big issue. They don't have.
Well, is Brogdon sticking around? What's his situation?
Right. So the idea when they got Brogdon and Adrian Wojnarowski, who's been on it for the Blazers, basically just like he's been the guy for them in terms of front office perspective. He's had it dialed all summer. He was like, yeah, they're going to trade Malcolm Brogdon. And then he shows up and he's like, no, they don't need to trade me. I'm so happy to be here. He's saying all the right things. He's kind of like being that guy, but also he's like sixth man of the year. He's 30 years old. Like, I'm sure he can feel his NBA mortality and was like left Indiana to go play for a really good team. And now he's on a team that's like, things like break right for the Blazers, they're going to finish like 11th in the West, right? Like if it really works out for them, they're like the 11th best team in the West.
Right.
I don't think Malcolm Brogdon wants that. So I think eventually he'll go. So I think like Malcolm Brogdon is potentially gone. Jeremy Grant is potentially gone. Rob Williams, who's a really nice addition off the bench. Like he's a really good player. If he's healthy, he's defensive player of the year candidate. He's like really a useful part on a really good team. Is he part of the Blazers' future, or is he like trade bait to be because they're, really, really gonna, be bad in the trough for 2 full seasons? That's the question. I think a lot of what this Blazers season is like data collection, right? Are they close? Or is Shaedon Sharpe at 20 not quite there, right? Is Scoot Henderson looks good, but he's 19 and the NBA is a league for adults. And he's, when he's 22, he'll be really good, but that's 3 seasons from now. So I think it's all about data collection, right? Like, I don't think they're going to be competitive. I think they're doing the right thing by giving, Shaedon Sharpe's going to start and they're going to give him the ball. He's going to play 32 minutes a night. That's the right thing to do, right? Like that's the correct way to approach this organizationally. It's way better to grow with young players and be bad than to do what they did in the past seasons, which is yank veterans out of the lineup and play 10-day guys. Like it is just a much more palatable experience from a fan perspective to say, here's our young players. Shaedon Sharpe might stink, but he's part of the future. Scoot might stink this year, but he's part of the future. Like we think these guys are going to be really good and we want them to get like real minutes to be good. You mentioned something about DeAndre Ayton. When Russ came to the Clippers, how quickly did you kind of realize, because I think he was pretty darn good actually as a Clipper. Like how quickly did you realize that sort of the emotional baggage that he had was like gone and that was going to allow him to play better? Like what were the signs for you as watching them that you knew Russ was kind of like free?
First game, to be honest, because I was at the first game. We were playing Sacramento and just the energy in the building was just different. And it was the second highest scoring game in NBA history that night.
Oh yeah. I remember that game. Yeah, it was nuts.
And he got fouled out to a standing ovation. So it was just a complete 180 because as a player, you're going to ride that high. So
right.
That was just an ideal situation for him. But in Russ's case, he's with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Ayton, he's going to be playing and probably he's going to be losing a lot this season. So I still think he can have that leap, but it's interesting to see how they'll cope with losing it. And plus DeAndre Ayton has been on the first season he played, he was on a team that wasn't very good.
Right.
And then he had the second season where he had the whole steroid thing, or was that the
Yes, year 2 he missed the first 30 games because of steroids.
And they almost made the playoffs. That was the one that was the bubble season where Booker went crazy.
Right. That's the 2019-2020 season. So that's the bubble season where they kind of solidified themselves in the bubble. I was like, oh, this team's going to be pretty good. Yeah. And Chris Paul decided to join up. He was like, ooh, I want to move to the desert.
So now he's experienced winning though for the last 3 years, like really consistent winning. So I'm interested to see how he's going to deal with it, but I think he's going to be ecstatic to be in Portland. I mean, most players that play for the Blazers seem to love it. You guys have really good fans. And I think that Ayton is going to love being the go-to guy. He's going to love the touches because he's not at the point of his career, in my opinion, where he's like craving a championship. He just wants to show people that he wants to beat the soft allegations. He wants to beat the I'm not a star allegations. He wants to prove that he's worth his #1 pick status. And I think you guys are actually getting him at a good time.
Yeah, I think there is something to him just like wanting to spread his wings, right? Like, the whole, even just like signing the contract with the Clippers with the Suns was a mess, right? It took till the middle of July because everyone knew they were going to match whatever he got, and no team wanted to like tie up a max contract in DeAndre Ayton. So he goes and finds a max contract from the Pacers, and the Suns matched I think they had a 48-hour window, and the Suns matched in like 35 minutes. Or the Suns were like, nope, you're coming back. You're like still under house arrest, buddy. So like he's been itching for this, and even when he showed up at media day, he said he said I thank the Suns for granting or like respecting my wishes and all these things. Like he wanted this, and I think it's not the same as you mentioned. Like Russ is coming to a team that maybe foolishly, but they think they could win a title, and they certainly have the talent. They're talented enough to win a title. Do I think they can? No, I don't. Clippers fans, no, I don't think they can win a title. I'm a hater, but like certainly to have enough talent. That's different than DeAndre Ayton's situation, like you said. It's like, but it has a similar vibe in that it's like, listen, I've got this identity, I got this rap, I have this sort of, this is what people think I am. What an opportunity to prove that I'm not that. Okay, I mentioned expectations right there. I want to ask you about your Clipper expectations because from what I've watched of your show, I believe they've changed pretty radically. Let's talk about that in the third segment to close the show, and I'll share some of my Blazer expectations as well. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still listen to a Locked On Blazers, Locked On Clippers crossover here with Darian Vaziri of Locked On Clippers. Okay, last season, I think the Clippers had some of the shortest title odds in the league. And I believe there was a new host on the Locked On Podcast Network, host of Locked On Clippers, who was very excited. Some of the highest expectations perhaps ever for a Clipper team. You don't seem to have those anymore, my man. I've listened to the show. What's changed? Why is it so different?
Simply because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George can't prove they can stay healthy for an extended period of time. Kawhi Leonard didn't play 10 consecutive games last year. I mean, obviously has that partially is because of the load management, like missing one game of a back-to-back, which we thought we were getting him on those conditions, that we knew that he was going to miss one game of a back-to-back because he did it in Toronto and won the championship that way. Look, I can sit here all day and talk about my issues with that, but what I know, Kawhi has a degenerative knee. We realized what we were getting when we got him with that particular thing. It's those other games where you think that there may not be an injury and they don't play, that you're like, come on, we need this game. Like, I'm not necessarily blaming them, but then there's the Clipper medical staff conversation. Are they, on the side of caution only for them to get hurt eventually? Like, it just feels like the fans are getting screwed more than anything with this experience of having Kawhi and Paul George. Besides the 1 year where we broke the second round curse and made the conference finals, it's been a drag. But you know what? I'll give you one good year, the year that Kawhi didn't play one game because we had no expectations. And Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Terrence Mann, and Luke Kennard found a way to win 42 games. Right. And by the way, I wanted to ask about Brogdon. Is he going to play on opening night?
Yeah, he's totally clear. It seems like what happened with the Clippers trade was that Kristaps Porzingis had like a midnight deadline to enter free agency. And he was like, I'm going to enter free agency and then you won't be able to trade for me. So the Clippers like, well, we're going to meet with Brogdon the following day to like get his medicals. And Kristaps was like, nah, you're not, because you need to make a decision immediately. So the Celtics had to like pivot and then trade Marcus Smart. So I think like certainly he was like, he had a torn tendon in his forearm. Like he was not healthy, but I think It wasn't that he specifically failed the medicals with the Clippers. It's that they just didn't have time to like fully look at them, I think is the current reporting. You can choose your own adventure on what you want to believe on that one. But yeah, he's going to play. He's going to come off the bench and play. It's going to be
it's a pretty good 7-man rotation.
Yeah, I would say the Blazers' top 8 is at least fun. Like Scoot and Matisse Thybulle's going to start at the 3, Jeremy Grant and Ayton, and then Rob Williams, Brogdon, and Shaedon Sharpe. That's a fun top 8. It's a pretty fun top 8. They don't have the 11 NBA players problem for sure, but I think they like 2 of those guys are 19 and 20, so it's going to be tough. But like, yeah, they have some like useful vets in the front half of the rotation. I don't think the Blazers are going to be like god awful. I mean, I think the record's going to be bad, but I think they're going to be competitive. I just think the West is really, really good, right? Like, I'm curious about that. Where do you see in the crowded West? I think like the consensus is that Denver and Phoenix are at the top. The other Staples Center tenant is often picked in that 3rd spot. But where do you see the Clippers stacking up in a crowded West?
Crazy with the Clippers because they could be anywhere between 2 to 10 because of the injuries to Kawhi and Paul. But in the last 12 years, the Lakers have only finished above the Clippers one time. So as much as everybody's higher on the Lakers because of some of the additions they've made and because they just made the conference finals, the regular season health has not been that much better than the Clippers when, like in seasons, that one season that Kawhi had tore his ACL and didn't play a game, you kind of have to discount that. He tore his ACL. It is what it is. But in the season that he's active, he plays around the same as LeBron and AD in terms of games. So regular season-wise, I think that we're not too far away from them. But it just seems like that conference finals run has given them that benefit of the doubt. As far as regular season, my expectation, like my prediction was 5th seed. But that's coming with I don't think Kawhi and Paul can stay healthy enough. If we get 60-plus games from Kawhi and Paul George and Ty Lue and everyone backs up the whole seriousness thing, we should be a top 3. We should be a top 3 seed, honestly. We should be.
Yeah.
I think
they're talented enough to be there for sure.
Yeah. We also have 4 former Blazers, which I think is funny. Nico Batum, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, and Mason Plumlee.
Yeah, the number of just like random Blazers role players hanging around the West and now in Phoenix with Nurk and Drew Eubanks and Nasir Little, like you could field a pretty good NBA bench with a bunch of dudes who used to start for the Blazers over the last decade. It's for sure a possibility. Okay, I know you mentioned this. I'm curious your thoughts on it since you're going to be in the building. Scoot Henderson has said that Russell Westbrook is like one of his NBA heroes, a guy he's looked up to. How much of Russ do you see in Scoot's game, and kind of what do you think about that matchup in general?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and lie and act like I've watched Scoot Henderson play a full game, just the summer league games I watched.
Wait, you weren't watching the G League Ignite? Like you weren't just pouring over the G League Ignite games? Do you have other interests in the world?
Yeah, unfortunately not. But Scoot Henderson, I mean, I've seen the highlights, and I can see where the Russ comparisons come in. Super strong football player-like looking guard that can, jump out of the gym. Jump shot is being questioned, very similar to how Westbrook was. But I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I do see some of that Russell Westbrook nuclear athleticism, but I'm just excited to watch him play. And I also think you might think, and Blazers fans are definitely not expecting a win here. Clipper fans are all expecting a win here.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a tricky game because, as you said, that first 7-man rotation for the Blazers is pretty good. Those are all good players. One of the things the Clippers struggled with last year is young and athletic teams that can kind of get up and down. And the Blazers, they have some of that, especially with Scoot Henderson. So I'm interested to see, with the Clippers being a little more youthful this year, wanting to – when I said they want to play fast, I don't mean we're going to be a run and gun team by any means, but I just mean not be so slow, like 28th, 27th in the league in pace, because now we have Westbrook, Bones, Highland, Terrence Mann getting more minutes, and KJ Martin. These are guys, and even Mason Plumlee, these are guys who are down to play up and down. So our personnel is actually a little bit better to play up and down, but I think that may favor you guys in some way. I think the dangerous part about this game for the Clippers in a trap game is that it's opening night. Scoot Henderson's first NBA game. This is a huge moment for him in his personal life. In LA, I know it's not a nationally televised game, but this is Los Angeles. This is the Staples Center. There are going to be people out there, and I think he is going to want to put on a show. And then the main way I think you could beat the Clippers is Ayton's first game as a Blazer. Yeah. He has 40 points and makes a statement to everyone that like he is here. Because I will say this one thing. If it's a Zubac, is a very good player, but DeAndre Ayton was the player of the series in the conference finals that we lost to the Suns. Like
he was great. Yeah, he was great.
He killed us on the glass. And when he's confident, when he's being empowered, the guy's a really skilled player. He's got a great mid-range. He's got great great actual post game, can turn over either shoulder, jump hook. So that's the avenue where I think Portland could win is, you get a little Malcolm Brogdon control in the game. Scoot Henderson makes a statement, but Ayton is the key, I think, to winning this game. But overall, Clippers got to win the game. I got the Clippers winning.
Yeah, take that, Frankie Muniz. Take that, Billy Crystal, Clipper Darryl. I haven't seen
Frankie Muniz in so long.
Yeah, I don't think Frankie goes to Clippers games anymore. I'm gonna have to update my my Clippers fan jokes. What about Billy Crystal? He's still in the gym?
Yeah, I don't see him as much regularly, but I know he's still at games here and there. Clipper Darryl, that's another story for another day. He's nowhere near the presence that he once was in the early 2010s and 2000s. That's where Dime Dropper has to come in.
Yeah, listen, I hope you have your red and blue suit and you're ready to ride and you're
Never.
Okay, well, at least consider it. Okay, never is maybe a little strong. At least consider it. I think it could be a whole bunch of fun. Yeah, I'm with you on Ayton. Like, Zoo is. I really like Zubac. Like, I think he's like legitimately one of the most underrated players in the league. He's just solid as hell.
Yeah.
And they needed him to play like more than he was capable of last year. They needed like 40 minutes of Zoo every night. And they need him to be good and not foul out. And I was like, blah, blah, blah. I think having Mason there, he's a really good backup center. I think that'll help. I'm curious who gets the sort of star treatment, like, and how much do they deploy kind of like Kawhi go swallow up the game type of defense? Because I feel like you see less of that during the regular season where Kawhi's just like
Kawhi guards best player type thing.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, right?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. I think the Clippers are going to switch 1 through 4, but what I think we're going to do is Kawhi is going to guard Jeremy Grant to start the game. PG on Sharp, Scoot and Russ are going to match up, and then we're going to have Terrence guarding Simons. Because as of now, I would say if you had to choose a candidate to take the most shots for you guys, would you choose Simons probably?
Yeah. Well, GAG might hijack some possessions, but it'll be him or Jeremy. But I think it'll be Ant if I had to guess because he gets to dribble more.
Right. So that's why Terrence will be on Anthony.
Anthony
Simons.
If it's Matisse at 3, do they maybe put Kawhi on Thibault so he can roam a little bit? Do they ever do stuff like that?
Is Thibault going to start or just saying when he's in the game?
He's going to start at the 3. Yeah.
Oh, and who's coming off the bench?
Shaden Sharp, your boy. He's gonna be a 7th man.
Oh, okay. I thought he was starting. The ESPN depth chart has him starting, and I figured just because lottery pick. Okay, then absolutely, I think we're gonna put Kawhi Leonard on Thibault.
Yeah,
but I'm tempted to say that maybe Westbrook because he's not a terrible. Actually, no, off ball he's not as good, but there are some things Westbrook does off the ball in terms of just his athleticism and like rebounding, where sagging off, it's not a bad thing. Ty Lue could make a statement and say, Paul George, go guard Anthony Simons. Let's show we're serious. You know what I'm saying? I doubt Kawhi guards Simons, or Scoot Henderson. So yeah, Kawhi is likely going to roam, but I wouldn't be surprised if they threw Russ as a roamer and then Paul George guarding
Scoot.
Guarding Anthony Simons. Actually, Scoot. Yeah. It's that makes it a lot more interesting that Matisse Thybulle is going to start. They definitely dare him to shoot, no doubt.
Yeah, he shot pretty well with the Blazers last year, over 38% on like almost 4 attempts a game. But there's so much data on Thybulle that he can't shoot, and they don't guard him like a shooter. So like it's one of those funny things. Like 38% is just a true fact in the box score. It's a true fact on Basketball Reference, and then you watch them play the games, and they don't give a heck about 38% from 3. Nobody treats him like a 38% 3-point shooter. You earn it in the league. Like, you earn it with your reputation in the league. It's one of the fun chess pieces. Maybe Thybulle keeps shooting above league average from 3, and you have to guard him like that. But during his Blazer career, it was very brief, 25 games, he was making shots, and people were like, cool, we bet you can't keep doing it. And they guard him that way. That's why I think they won't close with Thybulle on the floor. They'll close with Sharp because I think they want to have plus offensive players. But if you close with Sharp, that means like Shaden Sharp guards Paul George at the end of a game.
Yeah, right.
Best of luck. Best of luck to that.
Now that I'm thinking about it more, I don't think Kawhi Leonard would be the roamer if Jeremy Grant's in. I think Kawhi Leonard is going to be asked to guard Grant much quicker than Paul George would be asked to do it. Paul George has expressed that he doesn't want to, he said, I'm done bulking up. I'm more focused on being quicker, faster. So he doesn't want to play up as much. I think Kawhi Leonard's more willing to play up. And given his size and how good of a rebounder he is, I think that makes more sense anyway.
Yeah.
Kawhi just more muscular, So I think he'll be.
I can't believe we're like 10 years removed from when Paul George was supposed to play power forward for the Pacers. It's amazing that's 10 years ago now. And now he's like a 2. What? Now he's like a very big shooting guard.
With David West, he was playing power forward?
It was the year that they were going to go a little bit bigger and play less Roy Hibbert. They were, I think it was the last year of LeBron
in Miami.
It was maybe the LeBron. It was the LeBron championship year, against the Spurs that season. Paul George was going to bulk up to play the 4 because Danny Granger was gone, and they wanted to be smaller because they had to match up with Battier and Bosch and stuff like that. And PG was into it for 20 games to start the year, and then it was like, this sucks actually.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because part of the reason why that series went so far is because Hibbert was a problem for the Heat.
Right.
Yeah. Some good teams, Indiana.
Roy Hibbert kind of aged out of the NBA right before our eyes. So one of the weird, in real time, we watched the league and the strategy of the league pass him by. But now Vogel's back, and he's going to freaking turn Yusuf Nurkic into the new Roy Hibbert. Okay, Clippers are the 5th best team in the West. You heard it from Darian here first, and the Blazers are something like the 14th best team in the West. Should be a really fun opening night. I'm excited you're going to be there. If you are listening to Locked On Clippers, make sure it's your first listen. If you're listening to Locked On Blazers, make sure it's your first listen. Darian, this is a whole bunch of fun. Thanks for doing this, man.
Oh, anytime. This is great. I can't wait.
Appreciate everybody listening. We'll talk to you soon.